Great to see you too. I'm excited. So we're going to talk next Wednesday. We're going to discuss agentic AI, and we're going to try to capture some ideas or hopefully go back and forth on some things that will intrigue our audience, because I spend I don't know how much time you spend, but I spend a lot of time on Reddit. Maybe and when you follow the all the different artificial intelligence threads in Reddit for years now, I feel like I have some understanding of the zeitgeist, if that makes sense. Like what's the tone? So I'm curious, actually, and that would be good to know. You probably don't follow the daily ins and outs on Reddit, right?
Probably not that much. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
So you're in the real world, and when you're in the real world, what do you think of, like, because AI is your profession, right? It's my hobby and your profession. How's that, right?
Okay, that makes you much more dangerous.
Well, I mean, the point, I would think, to be fair, of it being a hobby is that I have to remain interested, right? Whereas you are actually paid to be interested, which they both have their interesting aspects. How's that, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Well, you'll and good for you, right? Because as many of us, as my most recent, I'm going on about education. So I'm starting a new series from the book that we started way back when, called "Are We Too Stupid to Be Lazy?" Right? Which is that we kind of have to think differently if we're going to be able to handle this technology. I think, that's my feeling. It's very disruptive, and we hear that a lot. You probably hear it too, or experience it. It's disruptive, right? And we're going to talk about agentic AI. I'm just saying AI in general is disruptive. How's that, right? It's a disruptive technology. Or do you disagree?
Oh yeah, that's probably the number one, maybe in the history of this civilization. Maybe.
Okay, see, there we go. We're both at the top, right? Like
very close to Gutenberg, and very close to maybe the wheel or fire, right? So if not, way above.
Nice. Totally agree. Yet, as we see in context, that doesn't mean humans, society, etc. Well, by the way, this is going to be our episode. If I do publish this, it'll be our episode will be on break for a while, because I'm going to be in Portugal on vacation. Sorry, we'll just have to admire each other from afar. I'm not going to try to do the time zones and figure out. So we'll take a hiatus. So I thought one fun thing, we can probably add to our talk is a little bit of prognostication. How's that, right? Like what's our picks for good or bad bets for the next X amount of time, right? If you do this every week, you're kind of like, we've done this for a year at least, right? Every week. And what were our concerns? For one, I think, like, in the beginning, I was more like, hey, this is another niche thing, right? Like, it's fun because you get to invent the rules, I think, because nobody knows how to do anything, which I find relaxing and fun, right? How about you? How did you feel in the beginning?
Well, yeah. So, okay, how do I get into this? So I think that there is kind of like a surprising state of affairs in AI. And maybe that's because I've been in AI for such a long time. I mean, I've been, in that field for such a long time that I have a very big library of books, right? And the surprising state is that people that are doing the cutting edge stuff with AI seem not to be terribly interested in those books that have all the answers. Or very, very good contribution to the answers that we are asking. Like, hey, architecture of an agentic system, how it's supposed to look like, or what are those agents supposed to do, and how are you supposed to be learning? there's conferences and books and proceedings that kind of were diving into this for decades, if not half a century now. So you mentioned Shannon a lot of times. There is the founding fathers, John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, all the toy problems that they were thinking about. And kind of they seemed to be kind of far away, maybe because we don't have the engines that can kind of process all this. Now those things are back in, kind of like in the state where we can build those systems now. So some people are beginning to realize in robotics that, hey, those robotic systems can be now programmed with AI. We can do logic with AI. We can do memory management. We can do machine learning at the meta level. So the
Okay.
machine
All
learning
right.
systems can self-improve. So I'm kind of surprised that there is very little discussion about, okay, so we have a theory of an agent, for example, that we're going to be talking about, right? And there's theories. So what we can do, well, agents can learn, so there could be an interaction that is learning oriented, or the goal can be something else, maybe a problem solving, right? Or the goal can be a plan. The goal can be something, but we are kind of forgetting about this, and we're trying to cram everything that we can into those huge GPTs, and kind of, okay, so let's do this, but under the hood. Let's do this through matrix multiplication, and maybe kind of try to do less, maybe with other things that can be hooked up to that AI, large language model kind of system-based architectures. So that's kind of my surprising kind of like state of affairs, I think.
So if I can paraphrase, and you can correct me, it's the kids nowadays. Damn, why don't they just, do their homework? Am I missing this?
Maybe this is
But
kind
that's your
of
deep,
the way it is.
I think that's your deep experience speaking,
Mm,
right? Which is that
mm,
it's nothing new, but
yeah.
you're treating it like it's new. And by the way, you are screwing around when you should be, better or more able to do this. I tell me your disappointment, I guess, right, with the Altmans or whatever. I don't know, whoever to blame for this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the disappointment is probably that they are focusing on one, truly breathtaking. I mean, there is no question. Maybe that's the justification, right? I mean, that GPT transformer models, all the connection stuff that they are doing. It's truly breathtaking and truly amazing. I mean, there is no question about that. So perhaps this overshadows everything else, right? And then the old stuff that is in the books, that's the professors, and the ivory tower stuff, and maybe they don't have this in a very don't hold it in very high regard, and maybe rightfully so. But there is some wisdom there, that can be kind of like picked, especially around the very hard sciences of AI, right? Those hard sciences is logic, for example, right? Logical systems, like reasoning, right? What does it mean to reason, right? The cognition, very deeply developed stuff, right? And everybody talks also about the agents, but nobody really dives into, okay, so what are those supposed to be doing? I mean, the only talk that there is about an agent is that, oh, okay, so there is going to be some sort of an kind of like a decision-making process that is
Right.
going to pick like one Python code out of 20, and that Python code is going to look and will tell you the weather, right? And then maybe
God,
you
and
have
it's
a
funny, by the way, the weather has been a big part of this forever.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think that's mankind's achievement that we want to predict the weather. And I keep thinking, what? That's so weird. But keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and then you're gonna have another question, and you're gonna kind of get to the Amazon agent or tool, and it's going to give you the best price for for the USB stick that you need or whatever, right? So that is kind of shallow, right? And in the enterprise environments, I see this kind of shallowness also, where we've got, okay, well, we have databases that are maybe not perfectly kind of described or represented, that we don't have the metadata that is perfect, we don't have the kind of ways to maybe do something that is like an automated stuff with databases, maybe retrieve something because I have a question, right? And that still remains a hard problem. So yeah, I guess surprising, but also huge opportunities for people like us to talk about something new and maybe contribute a little bit.
Absolutely. No, and again, I don't have too much fear because we're not in, well, I will do my one thing that I just mentioned that nobody will know, because who would know about this except when you go down the deep end, off the deep end, as I have, you get into Markov. And Markov to me is the most interesting analogy, because here's this guy who really just wanted to say that there's no such thing as free will, and as much as you can compute anything, everything is dependent on everything else. We can think of it as maybe the butterfly effect or something like that. Nothing can happen that isn't in some way part of a bigger chain. And his whole point was the only thing you have to know is the thing that came right before what you do now, which kind of nullifies this idea of our deep reflective thinking illusion about ourselves, right? That we make a decision based on a huge amount of insight that we're going to do this. And it's like, no, we usually make our decisions based on whatever just happened like the minute beforehand, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny in some ways, because huge decisions can be made, as we know, that can alter the fact or the lives of millions of people, which is terrible, right? Why would you make such a decision so foolhardy with such little info? But Markov said it's true. Like, that's because that's the way the universe works, right? And this technology that we're talking about and we're so amazed by does the exact same thing, right? Like, it doesn't know anything empirically. It just is good at predicting from one thing what to do next, right? So I'm not sure. Does that explain it to a general audience? I don't know if anyone has ever even heard of a Markov chain.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think, to your point, you often make, that like those things have to be kind of up to three, right? I think we can handle up to three things
Right.
cognitively, right?
True. Right.
Right. So, and they have to kind of be close, right? So they, like it cannot be like two things today, but that one thing from a year ago, and that makes it the three, and
Oh no, I heard about this thing about a year
call it.
ago. That's what it's still the thing that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there
Like,
you go. Yeah, there you go. So the Holy Trinity is somewhere kind of like there, right? I mean, it's there for a reason.
ooh, the Holy
But
Ghost. I never thought about the Holy Ghost, but yeah,
yeah,
sure.
but I think that maybe to me a useful allegory is that maybe more useful than kind of like the predicting the next thing, because because there is an emerging behavior. Like there's that next thing is actually a chain, right? So it's a oversimplification of a complexity in there, which can output code, right? And could output hundreds and hundreds of lines of code that is excellent, right? So it's not just one thing, because it's a program, right, that can be created through kind of like a step-by-step next kind of algorithm. So there is an emergent behavior. A better kind of way maybe to explain this, at least in my mind, is that if neural networks, our brains or large language models, are those probabilistic systems. There are those huge lakes. And if you are asking a question, it's kind of like fishing in that lake. You're dropping you're dropping the hook into a lake, and you are kind of going to drag maybe a fish. Maybe it's going to be a big fish, or maybe you should go to another place of the lake and kind of get something else out of the lake, right? Maybe it's going to be a rusty chair, right? Right. So you are on the surface of that probabilistic lake, right? And you are fishing in it, and you are not exactly sure what you're going to get. That's the probabilistic nature of the thing. Now, what AI, as a broad field, can help us with is that, well, it can maybe give you a little bit of a hint where to fish, right? So maybe you can kind of, take your paddle boat and kind of get to a different place of the lake and drop the hook there. Or maybe it will give you like a large number of hooks that you will just, or a net that you're going to drop into the lake and you will have a much better chance of getting what you want. So those multiple hooks and multiple nets could be now basically, in the AI terms, learning processes that you can apply on top of that probabilistic lake to actually, because you still need the lake, right? The fish is in the lake. All you can do is you can improve your fishing algorithm so that you get better results out of the lake. So I think this is maybe a useful allegory, because I really don't think that this kind of like a, word by word, kind of like a step by step kind of processes that kind of are the outputs really are kind of a good explanation because of that emergent behavior that is still there.
I think it's fabulous. I mean, that's a great allegory. I think the only thing that we often forget and always seem to forget is that we also have a million other sensory inputs. We live in the real world, right? So we don't have abstractness in the same manner that these things have been trained on, right? Because even if you're trained on every book, the books never exist in a world where people have appearances and there's a smell in the air and it's raining outside, and the myriad of things that we use to decide things, right, have to do with our tactile and our emotional abilities, which are sophisticated, incredibly sophisticated. I mean, beyond sophisticated. We have hearing, sight, smell, you know what I mean? We've got an unbelievable amount of inputs that have nothing to do with any data set, right? Like there's no, even though the GPTs can do visuals, I don't think they really can do visuals, if you know what I mean, because they're just kind of approximating what a lens can do. You see what I mean? Or they're approximating what a canvas can convey. And we're like, well, no, we actually look sometimes. I was watching some people learn art, and somebody was in a studio with a bunch of people. You know how it's like a art class or something, hey, let's do art. And they're painting a flamingo. And I thought, like, having studied art my whole life, the one thing you do is you don't ever paint a flamingo. Even though flamingos are great, you've never seen one, right? You've only imagined what they kind of look like, right? Or you've seen it in a picture. And I'm like, well, if you haven't ever seen it, you're how many steps removed in painting it? So you'll never be good, because if you've never actually experienced it, does that make any sense? I guess the point is that I think is the there's probably some metaphorical distance that GPT has from reality, right? That it can never, it can't jump its way out of, right? It's still going to never know. It's still going to need us to make decisions. Maybe this is leading into agentic, right? Like, what decisions does it already make? I think is a good place for us to begin, right? Because we know that computers make myriads of decisions, right? I would assume they pay our payrolls. That's not, a person doesn't have to go in and write checks anymore. That's pretty good. It distributes funds. It keeps track, I think, of planes in the sky and money in banks, and some pretty serious things are already controlled by computers, right? So what we're saying is that if I spend money by waving my watch somewhere, that some little demon, can we call them demons and have anyone under, that's kind of an inside joke, right?
Yeah. So in the computer science world, the demon has been, a loaded term, so maybe, but, kind of generally speaking, I like it.
Well, we could explain it. I just think it's a fun term that people wondered. It's like, well, it's kind of automatic, it's kind of controlled, but because it runs on its own, it can misbehave. And so the demons, I think, were just allegorical to, they can do good or bad things, right? Like, we're kind of just going to let the outcome speak for itself. And what happened with the outcomes is we have the world of credit, right? We don't have to have, or our derivatives. I mean, I look at finance as being a pretty good model because it can't run by humans. Like, you can't have humans really do this stuff. It's just too intense, right? But somehow a market always exists for something. I just actually had a I bought some calls in some dumb stock, and I'm thinking it's the old story of stock of like I bought it and it goes up, and then you look in the paper the next day and it goes up, and I buy more, and then you look in the paper next day and it goes up, and you buy more and it goes up, and you're like, oh, this is great, now sell it, and then the broker's like, to who? So, the thing is you create a market. So I bought this
Mm,
stuff and I could never get rid of it, because who other than me would even buy this derivative? But somebody
mm,
sold it to me and they made $100. So they don't care. You see what I mean? So you've almost created nothing, something out of nothing, which isn't that the human dream, right? That most of the stuff we have is just an illusion we created, and there really isn't that much tangible stuff that we control. Oh boy, no, man, let's get off of that topic. That sounds too
yeah.
dystopic.
Yeah, this reminds me of the discussion in the movie The Margin Call, when after they sold
Right.
everything,
There's no market.
yeah, it's all illusion, it's a money, it's just money, it's all made up.
Well, but even more reason, and I think even more reasons, it's been computerized. And as I would think, if we had a slide, I'm just thinking of a slide, like here are all the processes that are already controlled by computers, right? So
Mm,
that we would say all banking, credit, uh, derivatives, pretty much stock, anything to do with trains and oh, I guess all pricing models, because I actually found out that if you don't log into Amazon, it gives you a different price. I guess, does everybody know this already?
oh
But
yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm like, okay, pricing models all run by algorithms. Or how about this? Should we make a difference between agentic AI, whatever that means, and
Mm,
algorithmic behavior, right? Because I know for certain that if I make more than $1 more than this cutoff, I will be ineligible for this benefit. You see what I mean? Like we know
mm,
that, right? It's not an algorithm. It's just a weird thing that checks your paycheck and matches it. Say, hey, did this person do it? No. Did this person do it? No. Did this person? You
mm.
see what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that.
I have a
That's
few.
running so many things.
I have a few slides. So if you may, exactly, kind of, I was
Oh,
thinking about our presentation, right? And I know that maybe this is kind of like something that is too much for this talk, because we will have very little time. But this is kind of exactly what you are talking about, right? Like,
yeah.
okay, so an algorithm, right, is could be like that, right? Like, okay, just some input, right? Maybe about the stocks, right? And then the decision is buy or not, right? So that could be our starting point, right? And then I'm kind of starting to kind of talk about, okay, so what would be this system, right? Where there's some program, how would we turn this system into an agent, right? So I'm starting to add a few components, and this could be a very long discussion, Mike. So again, I can trim it and maybe kind of make it a little bit more applied. But and that additional component could be that the algorithm can ask additional question, right? Hey, I need more information. Um, so the algorithm may say, hey, I don't have enough information to make a decision. So that could
Oh,
be, now we are getting into the agentic territory. That would be an agent, right? If it does
well,
that.
if you do the first one, I think what I
Mhm.
need is sort of, let's go metaphorically, right? Because we've got
Uh-huh.
two things that I barely understand, right? I think the word algorithm. So in this
Mhm.
case, should I do it? Yes, no, is the algorithm.
Yes, yeah, that could
Okay, so
be.
you could
Yeah,
just
yeah.
put that down there because everybody
Mhm.
understands a Boolean or whatever.
All right.
Hey, should I cook dinner tonight? No.
Mhm.
Right? So if you go into the algorithm, should I cook dinner tonight? Yes, but what should I cook? How's
Yeah,
that for
okay.
metaphor?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can I can come up with a simple
Yeah, because
metaphor.
the thing
Yeah.
is that I'm a boxes and arrows guy, but guess what boxes and arrow are? They're kind of like
Mm,
they're paths, right? You can't
mm,
go backwards, and you're now showing that you can go backwards, but you have to do it in an interesting way because the algorithm, it's just yes, no, it's not maybe,
mm,
right? It
mm,
doesn't. it can't output maybe.
Yeah.
Am I getting anywhere?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So just
Yeah.
because we do this every day,
Mhm.
Markov chain and all, should I
Mhm.
cook dinner tonight? Yes, you should.
Mhm.
Well, that's the beginning of the decision making.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I will add a little bit, kind of like
Yeah, I
maybe
just
kind of something more applied.
just in
That
terms of getting the
Mhm.
idea, because we can read
Mhm.
these, but not everybody. That's all.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So the request would be kind of an element of an agentic architecture.
Well, but
Now,
pause, because you bring up
mhm,
something interesting, which is
mhm,
I think it's interesting that now a computer thingy that actually isn't is just a bunch of numbers is going to have to fail or find a superposition, if you want to get really weird, and say I need more info. And what
mhm,
can it ask? That's what I also think. And I think in a weird way, pardon me, you're the
mhm.
expert, it asks itself.
Yeah, and something to kind of think about this
Yeah.
might be that you are interested in weather, right? But you did not specify where you are, right? And
Okay.
ask the computer will tell you, hey, I need your zip code, right? Because the question wasn't complete, right? So the input was, hey, I need the agent to tell me something, but the agent needs to be more specific, right? So on the input side, you have a loop, right, that is going to correct your incompleteness or provide missing information. So
And should we
that's
say, by the way, that loops are something very, very computery? Like we don't see ourselves as loop in our
yeah,
thinking.
and that's kind of you have probably a better sense of what the audience will be for our talk, so I can definitely get into the concept of a loop, maybe a little bit
Well, I just
faster
mean we
because.
don't think about it and then think about it and then think about it and then think about it. We
Mm,
tend to be usually pretty like I'm going to decide or I'm going to put it off. And I think that's where I
mm,
came into we're in year 3 of
mm,
agentic AI, and I think it's still exposing the fact that we don't necessarily have a lot of ability to ask pertinent questions. Like we want somebody to do it for us.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I'm like, you if you have strong goals, here's your best friend, right? Like if you have
Mm,
a bunch of I will ask it usually 3 or 4 questions every morning just because I like that semantic, like, hey,
mm,
what's the capital of Turkey? Whatever, like kind of a googly kind of thing, right?
mm,
But if you have a strong goal, we're already in a great position to solve it. But I think when you get into its bigger, like agentic uses, we don't know the goal, right? We
mm.
don't have an idea of what kind of question we would ask it. And I do have, if I can show you one thing really quick, maybe
Sure.
it will add to this discussion because it's one of my favorite things. Let me just put it in the chat because I think it's fun. I use this in class all the time. And can I send a file? Yeah, chat, right? Chat, add to chat, send file. Plus. Nope, no, not an app. No, no, thank you. I don't want an app. I want this to go to, oh, there it is. Fine. Anyway, my favorite picture of all time, and maybe you can use it.
All
Got
right.
it?
Okay, well, opening. Well, do you see my screen right now about validation of your image?
Oh, did it say something mean?
No, this is good.
Oh,
Okay, so that's the 19 o'clock. Okay. Yeah, that's a good agent.
oh, okay, good. So I was thinking if you wanted to go somewhere, I think of
Mm,
this as being the most incredible thing I have ever seen and still think it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen, right?
mm,
Now, would anyone think twice about this message, because I do still, and this is obviously pretty old, you can tell by the screenshot, that
Mhm.
whatever brilliant person managed to make this work is still beyond me. What do you think?
Well, I guess I kind of, I mean, there's so many layers there. I don't know
I
where.
know, right? I mean, it's so deep that how could, because it had to have been architected without AI. But I think of, if agentic AI is anything, it would kind of be like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess this is definitely right. So the definition of an agent, right? Like, what is the definition of an agent? So I've been kind of trying to go step by step, right? Like, you are going now to the next diagram where
Right. This is so
yeah.
beyond that it still is
So
amazing, right? Okay, as
yeah,
long as you
yeah.
like it. I just think
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
totally.
kind of hits home of like, well, we don't have this world, right?
Mm,
We don't live in this world, correct? We live in a different world, and most people don't bother. You know what I mean? They're not going
mm,
to go to all the trouble to make sure that all their computer programs know about their thises and that's and everything else. Also, by the way, I like this because it seemed like you really screwed up, which is even better. Like,
mm.
you're gonna be you're gonna be in trouble if you don't deal with this right away. And by the way, here's the solution: use our product, which, even nicer, right?
Yeah, yeah. So for our audience, right, that maybe are not looking at the screen, right? It's about it's a screenshot of a phone that kind of announces that there is a curfew coming, and you need a hotel right away,
Oh,
right?
didn't you put it on the screen? I was just saying,
Yeah.
throw it on your
Oh,
diagram,
okay.
maybe. For it just illustrates it, I hope you agree, illustrates it in a fairly interesting way, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So
So yeah,
yeah,
it's
let
10
me.
o'clock. Okay, is it 10 o'clock? Turn on my alarm could be your first one, right?
Yeah,
Hey, I set an alarm for 10 o'clock. Algorithm says it's 10 o'clock. And what does that algorithm have to do? It's 9:50. Nope. It's 9:51 loop, right? It's nope,
yeah,
9:52. It's just this loop that is pretty dull and not clever, right? So number
yeah.
one is it actually 19 o'clock is 5? No, it's
Seven,
7. Okay.
seven.
But either way, the first one, input, computer program, output, is a timer, right? Hey, is
Mm,
it 10 o'clock yet?
mm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so this is a great agent, agentic application that is looking for inputs, and the input will be your location and the time, right? And perhaps if we want to make it very sophisticated, the knowledge of the AI that you didn't use phone to buy in a hotel or book any hotels, so it is going to be very alarming, and it's going to force you to kind of find a hotel, right? So that's kind of one that's kind of on the input side, right? Then there is also on the output side the reflection about the output, right? So we are kind of venturing a little bit into a learning environment where the agent is interested in its own output, and does it really allow us to kind of is the output really matching maybe the desired state? Right. So now that I have your example, maybe I can kind of build something around it, and now kind of allow the algorithm to learn from its own deficiencies on the output side. Right. And then you mentioned loops, right? Then that's another kind of property of an agentic system, right?
Mhm.
Hey, maybe we would like to kind of do this thing in a kind of repeated way, and then just maybe to finish the discussion, right? There's also agents that will explicitly conduct planning, right? That's another agentic characteristic. There is going to be uh, the the learning process that is an agentic characteristic. Another characteristic is an agent being aware that its memory is kind of something that is to be managed, right? And then okay, well, what if now everything that we've got can be done with more than one agent? So that is, so those were the foundations that we could discuss on some
Yeah.
examples. But yeah, I'm just worried a little bit that maybe it's too much material for the
Well,
very short
as
meeting.
we all do, we have to go down these roads, right? So
Mm,
I'm obviously the first one is prevalent day to day. So if we just go
mm,
to this
mm,
algorithm part, now I think the interesting thing might be, this is pretty relatable,
mm,
right? And algorithms are just is a decision. I think, well, let's see. One thing I do find that's interesting about computers, right, is they can't decide not to do something, whereas people can decide to ignore that, right? And I
yeah.
think when we
Mm,
talk about agentic AI, the fear is that if we would decide to not act, that can be because of, oh, I like procrastinating, or maybe it just doesn't feel right, or whatever. I mean, that's the kind of fun of the world, the Markov chain world, right? Because if you don't have any prior decision, the next one is harder, right? And so people they like to procrastinate. They don't like to make decisions. How's that? Let's just say
mm,
it's not
yeah.
something we like to do. Whereas a computer cannot decide not to do it.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
So in this
Mm,
case, input must have output. And I think what you start to introduce, and if we can keep going, I like the diagrams. I'm like, when do you decide to not do something? That I think is where agentic AI is going to struggle. What do you think?
yeah. So action versus inaction, right? The loop that we might have is it's very easy to implement if it is kind of an infinite loop, right? That's kind of like an operating system, right? You push the button, you start the computer, and it runs, but doesn't know when to, kind of stop executing, right? So that's a very profound question, right? How do we embed in an agent the process of kind of like standing down, right? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
Well, I
I
think if
think
you
that.
got there, I mean, if we're talking about agentic AI behavior, it has to have that, right? It has to have the do nothing output, which I think is where things get funny because we all know the
Mm,
fun thing about AIs is that they're very eager to please and they never seem to not have something to say, right? No, and I saw somebody's response about something today, and I'm really surprised that I don't know if you've seen this. It doesn't happen to me that often, but how much the tone is personalized to be a goofy friend of yours talking. Like it is
mm,
trying to personalize, which is great, right? That's a good thing that it tries to speak your language. That's what I love about it as a UI guy because I'm like, I can't say, hey, what
mm,
do you prefer? Do you prefer stern? Do you prefer funny? Like I mean, like you don't get to choose when you go to Amazon what tone Amazon takes. I
mm,
guess, right? Or we're continually trying to invent that. I remember working for Amazon when they were trying to introduce clothing and they found it so difficult to do because it's like, how do you get people engaged in buying clothing online? It's
mm,
easy to go to a store and try something on, right? And that is how people tend to buy things, whereas they had to fake all that. And they still are challenged by it. How's that? Like they wanted to
mm.
begin it because it's so much money, but but anyway,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see what I mean?
High touch versus low touch. Yeah.
100%. So they're always trying to tackle this experience. That being said, where was I going with this? Well, as I said, the point of personalization is interesting in current AI architectures, that it will
Mm,
tell you something different than me based on its feeling of whether or not I would be receptive.
mm,
Yay. Awesome. That's a new computer trick, right? Super cool. If you're agentic, though, my assumption is, hey, I want you to run my business. Okay.
mm,
I want you to hire and fire people. How's that? Right. That's a fun thing for you to do. And I want you to make sure that we make tons of money. Even easier, right?
yeah.
So there you go. go at it, AI, and we'll just have a few people like Jack to help you, course correct. So the question is that you hearing my totally reasonable request, right? Just go make money and only hire people that do really good work and lots of it, because otherwise the AI can do it. It doesn't complain and whatever. And it's super smart too. I talk to it and it seems to know more about my business than I do, which is not unreasonable, right? If we poke our nose into Sam Altman, I don't think he really understands how his own business works, which is fine. They never do. Because they're network effects, right? They're bigger than they are, and whatever they were trying was. It's fine, right? So when you talk about Instagram to Zuckerberg, he probably does not use it. Yeah, hey, it seems to, from the reports, that people like Instagram and we make a lot of money off of it. That's probably the limit of his knowledge of Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, chances are, yeah.
Well, interesting, right? Because we do look to the Oracle, hey, you've got the big idea, you've got the direction we're going in. I'm like, I don't think so. They can't. That's what's so fun about the network effect, right? Is that it sort of takes on a life of its own. So here we're going to let AI either serve your whims as a human, meaning me, and Apple has been working on this, obviously. It's trying, but it doesn't work yet, but they're trying and they're clever. We'll give them a pass, right? I think Google tries to do this quite a bit. I don't deal with Google every day, but I think they're trying more to be proactive. At least for me, they're very notification heavy right now because they're trying to train like, hey, you'll like this, same old preference algorithm, right? If you like this, you'll like this. Perfect. But Agentic AI should approve a budget for a Netflix show at some point, right? It should say, if you have this, and this, and I predict if I invest this amount of money that you will get this amount of viewership. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is the thing is, how about this? Or maybe I'm confused. When does it become, it has to be agentic by asking a question. And it has to be agentic by deciding not to act.
Well, so there are several properties of those agents, right? So I'm identifying in my very simplistic diagrams, the individual features, right? I mean, whether having one or two of those features makes you an agent, I don't know, right? But I think that I'm just trying to make a very kind of like trying to facilitate the transition from the foundational knowledge, right, like what an agent might be, to your very sophisticated interpretations, like, hey, so we have agentic enterprise and it's doing everything. And that's a huge jump, right? So I just trying to kind of maybe ramp
enormous. What I mean is, I think that is easily imagined, but I think impossible to do, right? Like you could probably get a is it like getting an AI to do something? Like let's say that say the system was like flying a plane. As far as I know, I think an AI could fly a plane. Okay, maybe. I don't even know, but let's just assume, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, well, but it will never fly a plane. That's the point, right? Like it could, because it's like driving a car, right? It's just the risk is much higher. And why would we do this, even though it probably could perform better on a whole than humans could? Probably, right?
Well, an autopilot in an airplane is probably flying 90% of the time, right? Once you are in the
absolutely. But that's the nature of planes, is they don't do much most of the time, right?
Yeah.
Avoiding weather, I guess, right, is the biggest thing. Try not to fly in the middle of a storm.
Yeah, so you have a few inputs that are, kind of like position, the gyroscope, all that stuff. And then you have a few outputs that are kind of the positions of the control surfaces. So this is a relatively easy agentic problem. I think that, because of there is so few inputs, And every time that there is like an outlier in the input, like a thunderstorm, chances are that the human is taking over, right?
Right.
So yeah, so to your point, right? There's plenty of discussions there, and also very funny. I just saw a talk of by Mark Andreessen about HR departments becoming IT departments because the AI is writing job descriptions and the AI is selecting the resumes of whatever comes in, and then the subject matter experts like IT specialists are kind of conducting the interviews because the HR person is not not knowledgeable about the domains of the enterprise, right? So he's talking, okay, so the HR is going to become, a part of the IT department, right? So very, very, very
No, no,
interesting
and
situation.
by the way, I think this list, I think the list is helpful. I think I can compile some of it, but you probably know offhand, here are things that are already controlled by
Mm,
computers
mm,
or
mm.
whatever, by algorithms, let's put it like that, right? Most of our businesses are running on some algorithm. That's what we both laugh about, right? That there's some crazy business logic that somebody made up once and they use it and it's used every day to price a security or whatever, right? Someone wrote this at some point and it does its little job, right? Just like you buy an oven and you expect it to get to a certain temperature and you put bread in and it, whatever, I mean, it does what it needs to do. And if it ever breaks, it's troublesome only because sometimes people don't know how or why it did what it did. Does that give us a living? Right? Like that we have to kind of figure out what this thing actually does because the people who
Mm.
built it didn't tell us how it works. Am I onto something yet?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay, well, at least in all the biggest businesses I've worked in, it all runs on sort of duct tape in some ways, right? Like it's just a bunch of stuff and it's great stuff and it works, but that's why you get it a little brittle. It's, by the way, not that I need to go into a tangent this late in our discussion, but IBM, what the heck? Let's bring this up because I think I want to write about this. What happened to what was it called? Edison or Newton or what was their language model, the thing that won Jeopardy? What the hell was that thing called?
yeah, there was something. Yeah, and
What was that called? Big Brain or something?
yeah, deep,
Deep
deep
Mind?
think. Yeah, deep
Deep
mind. I think
Think
it was
or
something like
something?
that. Yeah. Uh,
Anyway, how did they blow it so badly? Like catastrophically screwed up when they were not wrong, right? But maybe it's a fun topic because I was like, yeah, it won Jeopardy, and then nothing happened for 10 years, and some bunch of weirdos started a non-for-profit, and then suddenly
yeah.
they took over. Like, like that seems fun.
Yeah, that's a screw up, kind of magnificent screw up because they were supposed to be the probably the carrier of the AI, right? With such a head start.
Was it even AI? I have no idea what it was, right?
Well, yeah,
You didn't have large
it
language
was.
models at that point, I don't think.
Yeah, so that was actually the old-fashioned, core AI,
Watson. It
with
was
some,
called Watson.
yeah,
No.
yeah, with
Was it called
symbolic
Watson?
architecture. Yes, exactly. Yes, with
Okay.
symbolic architectures, with a lot of cool algorithmic stuff. But my feeling is that they, instead of investing in AI, they were investing very heavily in stock buybacks, and so they were not progressing. So that was a
But they
bean
had the
counter.
technology before the attention algorithm? No.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah, yeah, that
They
was
did?
before. Yes, that was a different technology, right? That was not,
Okay. So they
you
were
know,
they were in their own proprietary whatevery thing.
extremely impressive, right? But I think the bean counters decided that we are gonna invest in other things.
Interesting. Well, this is my I want AI to run my business folly, right? Because you have to know
Mm.
what your business does and how it works. And as you said, you don't even know how you hire people, which is
Yeah.
true. And it's not a bad thing. It's why we're better as a group than we are as individuals anyway, right? Because at least someone might have an opinion, if need be, about how many people does it take to do X or what skills are needed to do Y, right? Now,
Mm.
can you do that with these technologies? Sure, I think. But I do find maybe the HR being a good tactic because we're talking to college students and maybe college adjacent people. Most people spending the money for Northwestern, I guess, or teaching there are interested in job placement. So we'll say that agentic AI, number one, for sure, is going to take over HR. I don't think there's any way out of it at this point. Do you?
Well, it kind of depends on the kind
It's
of maybe
making a
the,
decision on whether to hire you, or whether you're even in the running or not.
but there is the legal stuff, right? There is the compliance issues, which are still, automated systems. You have to take this training versus that training. So there is at some point there is going to be maybe a need to kind of orchestrate, right, the legal compliance of an organization, and that might be still somebody that is human, because there is very high stakes there. But the mundane day-to-day HR work, there is no question in my mind that it's automated through large language models. I mean,
why
no doubt.
don't we see if we can focus there? Because I understand, like, we could show the example of the, hey, it's time to get a hotel, you know what I mean? Or here's this certain situation, but sooner or later you'll get the text is, okay, you're hired and you start on Monday. See what I mean? Like, I believe that as we automate HR, I think that'll be our testing ground. Like, it'll be like our self-driving cars. You know
Well,
what I
there is
mean?
always an interview process, right? So there is always a subject matter expert is going to participate in an interview, but the setup of the interview, right? The feedback management, like they're gonna kind of like you or not like you, so they're gonna kind of write you up a little bit, hey, how did you perform? That is going to be, that was never HR, right? That kind of like a expert level decision whether they want you or not was not HR. HR was just collecting data and sending you an email, you are hired versus not, right? So yeah, you're right that.
I've hired a lot of people, Jack. You'd be surprised. It's not. It's bad. It's not good. Basically, you're the one to blame. That's the whole point of hiring somebody. It's not that you're right or you pick the right person. It's just that when you make the mistakes, which you do probably one of every 3 people, because you're not, what do you know? Unless you hire people every day, which hopefully people don't, right? But yeah, you're right. If you go in front of Sam Altman and you're trying to get a low-level job at OpenAI, and you have to do an interview with Altman, what does his opinion mean at all, right? But it does for some dumb reason, right? Because they're like, yeah, we want to have this mental model of the people.
Yeah.
And we're going to leave a non-mental model of agentic AI, right? Like, we have no idea how it works, which is the fun part. Yeah. We just know its outputs, its outputs seem fine. But people are a pain in the butt. They take vacations, and speaking of which, I guess I could also put vacation in our talk, because I think of vacation as being the one time where you really do have a little or no preconceptions of you can't make decisions in normal ways. So a lot of times people seek out like a cruise ship. Guess what? All the decisions are made for you, right? You just have to pick and choose. It's a buffet, right? Take whatever you want is the goal. Decision making, no thank you, right? Taking care of your children, not a problem. However, if you go anywhere else, right, you're going to find yourself in decision land, which I personally enjoy because, hey, I've got this weird phone thing. I can actually find things, and I can, you know what I mean? I can use this technology to help me plan my day, or to not get lost, or to look up the rating of a restaurant. You know what I mean? Like, you have all this incredible information. Now, agentic AI, what should I do today? Yeah. Well, we used to have travel agents. Remember them? That was a real job where people had to learn to run Sabre systems. Do you remember Sabre, where you had to tab a lot? I guess people forget tabbing. Like, everything was tabbing at one point. We should do a comedy skit on this one. Remember? Because you had all these fields you had to fill in. Tap, 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 tap. 1, 2, 3, tap, 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 tap. Anyway, you didn't have, but people got good at it. And people would be like, oh, we got this hotel. We got this thing. We've got a wine tasting. We've got, you see what I mean? Like that was their job, to be agentic.
Yeah.
So I've replaced any need for that with this weird computer, mostly maps, I think, mostly the incredible data set of all the places in the world that we have right now, right? Like there isn't any super mysteries, I guess, in most populated places. Interesting, right? We built this huge data set. So anyway, all I'm saying, do I trust Google? I say, Google, what should I do today? Because when I was showing GPT to somebody, I was in Portugal and I was saying, hey, look, you can just talk to it and say, hey, what's a good place near here to get pastel de nata? You know, the fun little pastry. And it said, oh, the places that people tend to like is Maria's, you know, that is 2 blocks away. And they're like, oh yeah, Maria's does have really good pastel de natas. And I was like, there you go. Agentic AI for the win, right? Like that is still me asking rather than it telling me to do it.
Yeah.
So on one end, we've got this wonderful world that you've diagrammed, I think, which is the plumbing, so to speak, of how this thing can work. But at each of the steps, you know, there's this sort of question mark, right? Like what's the range of the goodness of this? Well, yeah, from this to this, yes to no, the range is pretty much binary, or you know, it'll be good half the time. How's there? You know, there's your odds, I guess, right? It'll be fine, probably. And then you go into more complexity and you start to build a curve, right? Of applicability. And I think what we're trying to do is create a really robust curve, right? That is predictable, but also can deal with so many more outside, so many more failure conditions, right? Like we want the failure conditions, like if you're piloting an airplane, as we just said, landing, that's the hard part, right? A million things can happen, but fortunately, people are pretty good at those million things, I guess, right? To ignore the 999,000 of them and focus on the one that gets you on the ground. Let's just pretend. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah, so my very simple agentic applications are telling me that I have to run, but
I know you do. Okay, 1028.
Yeah,
but let's before next week, next Tuesday, we'll review. But I think I'm going to try to compile a list. Think of the things that are already run by AI. Right? Yeah. Just make your list, because you know, right? We all know what sort of they are, and I don't think our audience knows. And then I think your demonstration comes in really handy, because then it's like, well, what would you trust it to do? I can trust it to handle the math of my bank account. I'm pretty happy with that, right? I trust it over people doing it. And I think if you get into trust, then, as I said, you've got to have these really big ranges that when it gets thrown a curveball, it says, I really don't understand what you're talking about, and I can't do anything. That's going to be really hard to program.
Yeah.
Have a good one, Jack.
Yeah, have a good one too. Yeah. But talk to you soon.
Okay. All right. We good? We good? I mean, it's going to be fun. See, we just filled an hour already. It's tons to talk about. Okay. All right. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.